So my name is Josh. I'm from the Centre of Hybrid Biodevices. My project is based around biosensing wounds. In essence, the key thing being in vivo, not using remote technologies actually in the body or on the body. So firstly, why? I mean, what's the point? Well, as we all know, we're all living longer in Britain, and that's great. But it also means that the percentage of population that is over 60 and 65 is increasing. This requires more palliative care. Also brings with it more age-related diseases like diabetes, peripheral artery disease, a whole host of issues. Now these tend to present as a primary issue. So like say peripheral artery disease, but quite often secondary you'll have a wound. So say an insect bite that fails to heal, or a diabetic foot ulcer that just gets worse. And they're never looked at as a primary point of care realistically. They'd rather treat the diabetes. So quite often we see it's left to the side and it's a long, lengthy process to heal. And that means that it costs quite a lot to the healthcare. It's in order of at least £6 billion per year, and that's only going to increase as we all get older, and sadly a little bit tubbier and so on. And as I mentioned, you know, it's not often seen as a primary point of care, it's a secondary. So a lot of technology only cares on what happens when the wound is at a point where it's a problem. You know, like when you have a diabetic foot ulcer that hasn't healed in 2 months, you're interested to see whether it's going to get infected, or maybe if it's, you know, failing to heal completely. So to put it into context a little bit more, it's best to know how wounds normally heal. There's 4 stages. We've all cut ourselves, so we all kind of know this, but maybe not formally. At first it bleeds, and then it stops bleeding, which is hemostasis. Now this happens within minutes of the cut occurring or the wound. Then inflammation. It tends to get quite red, hot, kind of sore to the touch. This happens pretty much from the offset and then lasts for minutes to hours to days realistically. And then proliferation starts, which is when new tissue forms over the actual wound bed, and we start to see it like scab over and heal a little bit. And then eventually we reach maturation, which is a point where scar tissue forms. I'm sure we've all got a wee scar. It kind of changes and eventually matures over years at times. However, in chronic wounds, so in someone that has diabetes, peripheral artery disease, or any other kind of complex chronic disease, a wound may start bleeding and then it'll stop bleeding, but then it gets stuck into inflammation. And this is really the big issue, is inflammation is great when it works well, but when it doesn't, it causes some nasty issues. Kind of like that beautiful picture there showing a venous stasis ulcer that's failed to heal. So as I said, and as the previous slide showed, inflammation doesn't stop. Now your body is very clever, it knows how to start and stop things, but occasionally when you have diseases, or when there's extra factors like pathogens such as bacteria involved, you get something that can remain open for months, which is obviously not a great thing. When inflammation fails to kind of cease, the body starts destroying itself, not quite like an autoimmune disease like arthritis or something similar, but it's just going mental, trying to kill everything in the region. This causes further damage, promotes further inflammation, and then it just cascades and cascades. And obviously, having that big lesion is not going to be nice to walk around with, and it can lead to things such as amputation, sepsis, and death. So what am I going to be doing? I'm trying to find ways to sense this. Now, as I mentioned before, you can look at bacteria. Bacteria is great and important, so you can use impedance to measure it, which is quite complex with the scope of the time frame I have. There's also biochemical assays looking at the smaller, more intricate ways of how it works. These tend to be done in labs normally, but I'm looking at trying to find a way of bringing it into the actual body on a bandage. And standard pH and temperature. We've all had a thermometer in our ear at one point in our lives, just putting that into the wound bed. However, it's not as easy as all that. Sensing continuously requires low-powered devices, which is an issue. You don't want to hurt the wound anymore. You don't want to stick something in there that makes the body go crazy. Predicting the outcome of a wound from the get-go is pretty hard, and it will require multiple sensor technologies, which is going to be complex and bulky. And obviously, you can have a weak cut, or you can have a gash all the way up your leg. Variability is huge, and every person is different. That causes issues in immune response. And lastly, just as I'm finishing up, regulatory approval. I need to get this to the marketplace, which means I have to follow very strict